So today we'll be getting into some topics involving Bianca Belair, a wrestling personality's strong words on CM Punk's run in AEW, changes for the King and Queen, and more. Let's start things off with everything Bianca Belair related, starting off with her big accomplishment of being PWI's #1 ranked women's wrestler of 2021. Everyone looks forward to PWI's Top Wrestler of the Year list every year, and things were no different this time around. They revealed the men's list a few months back, and that saw AEW World Champion take the #1 spot over WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns. Well, now, the women's list has been revealed, with Bianca Belair topping the list as the #1 women's wrestler of 2021. Bianca has appeared on the list since 2018, and you can really see the leaps she continues to make over the years. In 2018, she was 85. In 2019, she was 36. In 2020, she was 23. And then she jumped 23 spots in 2021 to be #1. Bianca Belair reacted to the #1 spot on the list while speaking with Mike Jones of DC 101. Quote, "It's a huge honor. It's just a lot of validation, and I love the validation and recognition that I'm getting, but all I can say is that I'm #1 this year. But the grind will never stop. It will continue. It's an amazing journey since 2016 to now. It's crazy to think it's only been 5 years, but to be considered the #1 wrestler in the world right now, it's just an amazing representation, and all that I can say is that I'm blessed and going to continue to grind." End quote. So that's what makes this even more of an accomplishment as well. Bianca hasn't been wrestling for 10 or 15 years. She just picked wrestling up a little over 5 years ago and instantly became the #1 ranked women's wrestler in the world. Bianca was the only WWE women's wrestler in the top 5 of the list as well. So just a huge accomplishment for her. Even though she already has the crown of being the best women's wrestler in the world in 2021, this year isn't exactly over yet, and she can still add on to her career year that she had this year. Bianca Belair is still involved in the title picture on Raw. She did have a solid reason to be the #1 contender. She pointed out that she defeated Raw Women's Champion at the time, Charlotte Flair, via disqualification last week. So that technically counts as a win over the Raw Champion and makes her #1 contender. So that was a great explanation and valid reason for Bianca to get another title opportunity. It's not like she came out and just demanded a match. She actually had a legitimate claim to a title match. So that's always great to see. So, Bianca and Becky will continue their feud on Raw now. She had a great exchange during that segment, and the feud feels like it's getting personal. So, it's going to be a lot of fun to see how this feud continues to unfold, and if Bianca can secure another world title in 2021. The WWE King and Queen both have taken their throne and have started their reign. Starting off with Zelina Vega. Zelina put the Raw women's roster on notice during her crowning ceremony. The camera even showed that the women's roster was watching the segment from backstage. Another small detail that you probably caught on to was Zelina's accent. She slipped in and out of a royal accent. So, it appears that her character will really be getting into the queen persona and speaking with a royal accent from time to time, which is not anything new. We've seen that before in the years past. A superstar wins the crown and now they have a royal accent all of a sudden. It's something we saw done by former winners like Booker T. The second Booker T won the crown, he really indulged into the whole idea of being royalty. He spoke with an accent, he had his own queen by his side, and he was really a fun king. Booker T even won the world title as king, so double accomplishments right there. And that's the biggest question right now for Xavier and Zelina. How does winning the thrones elevate their status on the roster? Well, for Zelina, like we went over a few days ago, she's listed as the last contender for the Raw Women's title. 2 Queen's Crown Tournament losers, Liv Morgan and Carmella, are ranked ahead of the winner, Zelina Vega. So even though it was just a social media graphic WWE released, it does make you question if they really view Zelina as the last possible option for the women's title. Even if she is successful in winning the title, it does feel like Zelina should be involved in the title scene over this next season of Raw, especially if she keeps this winning streak going and she's the queen. It feels like she'll eventually need to break into the title scene. It also appears that WWE will be dropping the Vega part of her name, since she will now be referred to as Queen Zelina. Now for Xavier Woods. Things are a bit tricky there. This is probably one of the rare occasions where the King of the Ring is actively in a tag team, so it'll be quite the challenge for him to rip off a big singles run while he's still tied down to Kofi Kingston. The last few Kings have always been heels as well, so that does make you question Xavier Woods. Like we briefly discussed after his win, does Xavier eventually go mad with power? Does he start becoming less of Xavier Woods and more of this self-centered king? Maybe one of his first few feuds could be with Kofi Kingston. Kofi is a former WWE champion and his longtime teammate, so if Xavier Woods mops the floor with Kofi, it would be pretty impressive and a great start for his potential singles run. As far as his name goes, they still seem to be undecided. He's being called King Xavier, at other times he's being called King Woods, so we'll see what name they finally decide to go with there for him. Former WWE Executive Director Eric Bischoff made headlines this week for his comments on how CM Punk's AEW run has been thus far. He had this to say when speaking on the 83 Weeks podcast. Quote, "Punk hasn't delivered. Punk was the guy that came out and his first comments were, the addition of this talent was more significant than Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Constantly making references to WCW because they want to be the company that WCW was back in the mid-90s. There's these constant references to WCW. When Scott Hall and Kevin Nash came in, we took off. Punk, you came in and you crapped the bed in terms of ratings. It ain't there, and there's nothing in reality to suggest otherwise. You just need to be careful about what you say until you're delivering. That comment that Punk made about these guys being more significant than Hall and Nash in '96, and then 2 weeks after Punk made his big arrival, the ratings dropped by 40 to 50%. End quote. So definitely some strong words there by Eric Bischoff, and it has fans talking. The anticipation of CM Punk's arrival was huge, and his AEW debut gave AEW their biggest ratings in the company's entire history. Then, more names like Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson started pouring in, and that's when Punk and others started to compare these signings to what WCW was doing in the mid-90s. Eric Bischoff was right there in WCW at that time, so he knows the most about what it was like in that era. So Eric is saying that they came in, declared victory, declared that it was bigger than WCW, yet Eric's argument is that the hype has died down now, and ratings have dropped by nearly 50%. Another thing that Eric touched on was the fact that CM Punk has no serious storylines, feuds, or angles since his arrival in AEW. They're just putting him in random matches with no story supporting the match, and that is true. Punk came in and had a story with Darby Allin, but since then, Punk's story and direction has been a bit unclear and messy. He's not really deeply involved with any angles or storylines. And that's something that Punk has always talked about. He talked how story would be the most important thing for his return to wrestling. Yet, here he is in wrestling, but the story element isn't really there. And it's the conversation that's going around, and you see some fans saying things like, CM Punk has no direction, AEW is ruining CM Punk, and all these other side comments like that. So it's still exciting to see Punk inside of the wrestling ring, but from a creative and storyline point of view, they drastically have to step things up for Punk. But what are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.
you.